You know that rare, almost surreal moment when you open your banking app and you don't feel dread? No panic, no quick swipe to close it before reality hits. Instead, you actually smile. It's that moment when money stops being a source of anxiety, when you stop doing mental gymnastics to figure out if you can afford a coffee, or if buying groceries means surviving on instant noodles for the rest of the week. There's a very specific one where that shift happens. It's not six figures. It's not $1 million. It's much smaller, but far more powerful. Because once you hit it, everything about how you think, feel, and behave with money completely transforms. That number is $20,000. I'm Nick, and I've spent the last few years studying the psychology of money, how people build wealth, why others stay stuck, and what small mindset shifts create huge long term results. Now, most people think wealth is all about earning more, climbing the corporate ladder, getting that promotion, or finding the next big investment. But here's the truth: no one tells you wealth starts in your brain long before it shows up in your bank account. And $20,000 is the first real turning point. Let's unpack why this number matters so much and why it quietly separates people who go on to build real financial freedom from those who spend decades trapped in the same paycheck to paycheck cycle. Think about pushing a heavy boulder up a hill. The hardest part is the beginning, when the weight feels impossible to move. You push, strain, sweat, and barely see progress. But if you keep at it, something changes, momentum builds, the boulder starts rolling, and suddenly gravity works for you instead of against you. That's exactly what happens with your finances. Everything before $20,000 feels uphill, like the universe is resisting your every effort. Every emergency feels like a setback, every bill a crisis. But once you cross that invisible threshold, the momentum flips. You start seeing progress. Your money begins to move on its own. Here's the fascinating part: this isn't just about math or interest rates, the shift is neurological. When you have nothing saved, your brain is stuck in what psychologists call survival mode. Every decision, from accepting a job to paying a bill, is filtered through fear. You're not thinking long term, you're just trying to survive the week. But once you build that first meaningful cushion, when you hit around $20,000, your brain finally relaxes. You exit survival mode, you stop asking, "How do I make it to Friday?" and start asking, "How can I make my money work for me?" That mental freedom changes everything. You stop reacting to money and start directing it. And here's where the data gets even more interesting. Research shows that having as little as $2,000 in savings boosts your financial well-being by over 20%. Not because it's a lot of money, but because it removes panic from your decision making. Push that to 3 to 6 months of expenses, roughly $20,000 for most people, and you unlock another massive boost in confidence, stability, and long-term growth. It's like giving your brain oxygen for the first time after years of suffocating under financial stress. And once that shift happens, your relationship with money is never the same again. Let's talk about what actually happens once you hit that $20,000 mark, because this is where most people's financial story finally starts to change. Up until now, every dollar you've saved has felt painfully slow. You've had to budget hard, skip nights out, and maybe even question if all this sacrifice is worth it. But once you reach that first milestone, something amazing happens. Your money starts helping you. Here's the simple math behind it. Let's say you're saving $1,000 every month and earning around 8% a year on your investments. It takes roughly 19 months to build your first $20,000. That's about a year and a half of consistent effort, discipline, and saying no to short-term comfort. Now here's the fun part. Your second $20,000 doesn't take another 19 months. It only takes 17 months. Same income, same habits, same effort. So what changed compound interest? Momentum. That first $20,000 is now doing part of the heavy lifting for you. Your money is finally earning its own paycheck. And as the months go by, the timeline between each milestone gets shorter and shorter. By the time you've built up around $60,000, your investments alone could be generating thousands of dollars per year, money that shows up even when you're not working for it. That's the point where you realize wealth isn't built through hustle alone, it's built through systems that compound quietly in the background. And here's where it gets really interesting. The psychological shift that happens once your money starts making money is enormous. When you first begin saving, every decision feels like a battle. Should I go out tonight? Can I afford this? Is this worth the risk? You're constantly negotiating with yourself. But once you've built that first base, that $20,000 cushion, your brain starts operating differently. You begin to think in terms of long-term opportunity instead of short-term scarcity. A $200 investment return used to feel like nothing. But when your $20,000 grows 10%, That's $2,000 earned passively, the same as working a part-time job, except you didn't have to clock in. That's when the light bulb goes off. Oh, this actually works. The mechanics of wealth don't suddenly change. The math is the same for everyone. What changes is scale. At $2,000 invested, a 10% gain feels like lunch money. At $20,000, it feels meaningful. At $200,000, it's life-changing. That's why most people never experience the full potential of compounding. They give up before they reach the first tipping point. They never let the snowball grow big enough to roll on its own. But once you do, the entire game flips. Here's something I tell people all the time. The hardest $20,000 you'll ever save is your first. Every dollar after that becomes easier, faster, and more automatic. Why? Because you've already done the hard part. You've changed who you are with money. To reach $20,000, you had to build habits. Most people never master patience, consistency, and delayed gratification. You had to say no to things that brought temporary pleasure in order to say yes to something bigger. That discipline doesn't disappear once you reach your goal. It compounds just like your money does. And maybe the most powerful part, you've proven to yourself that you can control your financial future. You're no longer reacting to money, you're in charge of it. That's a level of confidence no paycheck can buy. From here, every financial decision feels lighter. You stop obsessing over every $3 coffee and start thinking about the bigger picture: your career, your investments, your time. Because now you finally understand something that very few people ever do. Wealth isn't just about having money, it's about having options. And options, that freedom to choose what to do, where to go, who to work with, is the first real taste of financial independence. Something unexpected happens once you reach $20,000. You start realizing that money isn't just about buying things, it's about buying control. Before, you used to tolerate jobs that drained you, people who disrespected you, and routines that made you miserable because you had to. You couldn't risk losing your paycheck. You couldn't afford to say no. But once you have that first real cushion enough to survive several months without income, you stop negotiating with fear. Suddenly, you're not operating from desperation anymore. You're operating from choice. That's one of the most underrated forms of wealth. There is the power to walk away. And you'd be surprised how much your world changes once you have that power. The same boss who used to intimidate you. You start realizing they don't actually control your life. The toxic client who underpays you, you can fire them. The job that makes you dread Mondays. You can start planning your exit not from panic, but from clarity. That's when you begin playing life on offense, not defense. See, most people think financial freedom is about Lamborghinis and penthouses, but that's the Instagram version. The real version, the one that actually changes your day-to-day reality, starts at a much smaller number. It's when your bills are covered, your rent's paid, and your savings can carry you through months of uncertainty without fear. That's when you start breathing differently. You wake up one day and realize, I don't have to tolerate chaos just to survive. That's the mental shift that builds real wealth, not the lottery win, not the overnight success, but that steady, unshakable confidence that comes from knowing you're safe. It's hard to overstate how much that safety rewires your brain. When you're not constantly thinking about survival, you start thinking about strategy. You start noticing opportunities that you used to overlook: side projects, business ideas, investments, or new skills. And because you're not desperate for immediate results, you make better decisions. Psychologists call this psychological safety. It's the foundation of creativity, focus, and growth. Without it, your brain is stuck in fight or flight mode, always chasing short-term rewards. That's why poor decision-making often disappears when people finally have a small financial buffer. It's not that they got smarter overnight, it's that their nervous system finally calmed down. Think about it. When you're broke, every mistake feels catastrophic. A flat tire can ruin your week. A missed shift can destroy your budget. But when you have savings, those same events become inconveniences, not crises. You stop reacting emotionally to money. You start responding logically. That's the real value of your first $20,000. It's not the number itself. It's the psychological transformation it creates. It's the day you stop asking, can I survive this, and start asking, what's the smartest next move? And when you start thinking that way, life opens up. You begin to recognize patterns, how money works, how systems compound, how opportunity behaves. You stop chasing shiny distractions and start building foundation. You make fewer impulsive moves, but each one carries more weight. This is the moment when people quietly start building real wealth, not through luck, but through clarity. And it all started with one simple goal: saving your first $20,000. Not to impress anyone, not to show off, but to build the freedom to say no. Because when you can say no to the wrong job, the wrong person, the wrong path, you finally create space for the right ones to appear. So you've reached it, the first real milestone. You've got your $20 to $1,000. Your bills are covered, your nerves are calmer, and for the first time, you can breathe without that constant background panic. Now comes the next question, what do you do with it? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people who finally save a decent amount of money end up losing it within a year. Why? Because they think the goal was just to save, but saving is only the first step. The real game is building a system that keeps your money growing automatically, quietly, and safely. Let's start with a rule that sounds boring but changes everything. Money without a plan always finds its way back to zero. That's why the next phase isn't about making risky investments or chasing fast returns, it's about structure. Here's how I like to break down that $20,000, $5,000 emergency fund. This is your safety net, not your play money. It's what keeps you from using credit cards when life punches you in the face. $10,000 long-term investments. Think index funds, ETFs, or a diversified portfolio that compounds over time. You're not trying to double your money in 6 months, you're letting time do the heavy lifting. $3,000 skill and growth fund. Use this to invest in yourself, online courses, certifications, tools for a side hustle. A better skill set will always outperform any stock return. $2,000 freedom fund. This one's special. It's not for emergencies or bills, it's for options. The ability to take a break, start a small project, or say yes to an opportunity that could change your life. That's how you turn money into momentum. Here's something most people miss. The goal isn't just to protect your $20,000 to $1,000, it's to make sure it never stops moving. Because static money dies. Inflation eats it. Impulse spending erases it, and fear keeps it from multiplying. But when you set it in motion, when you assign each dollar a job, you remove emotion from your financial decisions, you stop thinking, should I invest? You start thinking, this money's already working, my only job is to monitor it. That's what real wealth builders do. They create systems that protect them from their own impulses. Let's be real, you'll still have doubts. You'll still feel fear when markets drop or when someone on social media claims they made a fortune overnight. But once you've built your base and learned to trust the system, those emotions don't control you anymore because you've seen what happens when you stay consistent. Your $20,000 becomes $25,000, then $30,000, then $50,000, not through miracles, through boring, disciplined, automated growth. And one day, you'll look back and realize that the hardest part wasn't learning how to invest, it was learning how to wait. Here's the part no one tells you. You don't need to be extraordinary to build wealth. You just need to stop interrupting the process. You don't need to predict markets. You don't need to time every opportunity. You just need to keep showing up month after month, year after year. That's what separates people who used to have money from people who stay wealthy. The first group treats $20,000 like a trophy. The second group treats it like a foundation. So if you're watching this and you're somewhere on that journey, still saving, still struggling, still wondering if it's even worth it, remember this. Your first $20,000 isn't just a number. It's the line between survival and stability. It's the seed that grows into everything else: wealth, freedom, confidence, peace. Because once you stop chasing money and start building systems that make money chase you, everything changes. That's when you finally understand what financial freedom really means. Not millions in the bank, but the quiet power of knowing you'll be okay, no matter what happens next.